Feeling the heat after a day of disruption. We're warned temperatures could hit 41 Celsius tomorrow. Today, runways and roads melted, train services cancelled, schools shut. Wales and Cornwall recorded their hottest days ever.
This weather is absolutely unprecedented. We have never seen anything like these temperatures in our models before.
Hospitals and paramedics under pressure as the danger to life warning remains in place until tomorrow night. Across Europe, wildfires rage on in what's been called a heat apocalypse. In Spain, scenes reminiscent of a disaster movie. Thousands are evacuated in France.
Are you worried? Are you frightened?
Oh, I'm sad. I'm really sad. Never mind.
But this is the reality, and a more frequent one, unless, as experts warn, more isn't done to adapt to our changing climate. For many, it will be an uncomfortably hot night ahead of what's set to be another record-breaking day tomorrow. Also on News at 10 tonight. The results are in. Tom Tugendhat is out of the Tory leadership race as Liz Truss and Kemi Badenoch battle for a place in the final ballot. And why, after thousands of years, bison are back in the English woodland.
This is ITV News at 10 with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good evening. The sun has set on Meltdown Monday, and yet when it comes up again in the morning, even higher temperatures will be written into the record book. So far, just Wales and Cornwall had their hottest days ever. Wales was almost 2 degrees warmer than the previous high set 3 decades ago. Well, this evening's temperatures are breaking nighttime records. Very sadly, another 2 teenage boys, a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old, have drowned in separate incidents. 2 airports had to close because of melting sections of runway, RAF Bryce Norton in Oxfordshire and Luton, 60 miles east. That meant delayed holiday flights. Train services had already been scaled back in case of buckling rails. They'll be scaled back even more tomorrow, which promises to be a torrid Tuesday.
As another summer heads towards an uncomfortable height, take another look at the place we like to call our green and pleasant land. In places, it's not so green and pleasant. Well, maybe if you can get off work and find your way to the water. But the message from the government is clear. This weather is not so much to be enjoyed as to be wary of.
I think it's about common sense, following the advice, public health advice from the UK HSA in terms of hydration, covering up, being in the shade, avoiding the times of the day when the heat is at its peak. There's a particular message, particularly for teenagers, children, some of those who may be tempted to go for a swim. There's significant dangers of that.
Tragedy took another teenage life today. A 16-year-old boy drowned after getting into difficulty in a lake in Berkshire. His death follows similar fatal incidents in Manchester and Northumberland over the weekend. But an extreme heat warning means that temperatures are so high, they represent a risk to everyone's health, and care must be taken to avoid their effects.
Although some people are most vulnerable, particularly those in older age groups, those with heart and lung conditions, these temperatures are so unusually high that everybody can be affected.
Some schools close today, others will close tomorrow because of the heat, which has already taken its toll on parts of our vital infrastructure. The RAF halted flights in and out of its base at Bryce Norton, while Luton Airport suspended flights for a few hours after high temperatures caused a defect in its runway.
Our flight literally got taken off the board and we only found out from the app that our flight was cancelled.
So we queued up for ages and they said they could reschedule it tomorrow from Birmingham or from here next Monday.
On the railways, services were cancelled and some trains were running at half the speed because the tracks couldn't take the heat, though there was at least one corner of cool air at Birmingham New Street. The heatwave has struck and covered much of the United Kingdom in fierce sunshine and red warnings. And throughout the afternoon, on stretches of bleached out parkland like this, the temperature climbs and climbs again.
This weather is absolutely unprecedented. We have never seen anything like these temperatures in our models before. So the highest temperature we've ever recorded in the UK is 38.7 in 2019. We are seeing a higher than 90% chance of breaking that temperature, if not today, then tomorrow, and at least a 60% chance of reaching 40 degrees, which is unheard of.
Where a cooling sea meets sun-baked land, of course, there is a glorious opportunity to enjoy the weather. The beach at Bournemouth this afternoon was packed, but temperatures this high form no part of British seaside tradition, and they're ever more likely to be part of our future. Geraint Vincent, News at 10.
Well, the red warning for heat that was in place today for central parts of England continues until midnight tomorrow, along with an amber warning covering Wales and parts of Scotland too. Santon Downham in Suffolk saw the hottest temperature in the UK today, 38.1 Celsius. Records were set for Wales and Cornwall. Harden registered 37.1 Celsius, beating the previous record set in 1990 by almost 2 degrees. Bude topped 34 degrees. The ongoing red heat alert warns of serious illness or danger to life. We know from previous heat waves that prolonged extreme heat can have a major impact on excess deaths. In the UK's first summer of lockdown, the temperature climbed to 37.8 degrees, with more than 2,500 people's deaths linked to the heat. In 2003 in France, when it was around 37 degrees for a week, 15,000 excess deaths were put down to the extreme temperatures. And so health experts here are urging the public and those caring for them to take the current warnings very seriously indeed.
Extreme heat is dangerous, but for the vulnerable, like rough sleepers, it can be deadly.
Oh, yeah. There you go, my son. Thank you.
It is why teams of volunteers were out in Bristol to make sure the homeless had enough to eat and drink.
I'll stay out of the heat. Go in shops, you've got air conditioning, have a look around shops. I'll stay out the sun.
And while the NHS has also been preparing for the unprecedented temperatures, doctors at this West London hospital say post-COVID pressures are now giving way to ones brought on by the heat wave.
We've just had 8 ambulances arrive at the moment. All those crews have been offloaded to go back out. It's really hot in the department as well. We're in an old building and we're doing what we can to keep our patients and our staff cool where we can.
And everyone's being advised to take precautions because of the sheer intensity of that heat. The NHS is reporting that in the past week, it has seen a 525% increase to its website for heat exhaustion advice.
Ask my daughter to get a fan for me.
And it is the elderly who are particularly at risk. Staff were doing all they could to protect residents at this care home in Cambridge, keeping curtains closed and keeping them indoors.
Well, I wish it would stop. I'll be glad when it does stop. We've only got one more day, haven't we, of extreme heat.
I drink a lot of juice and I have a shower.
But it isn't just the daytime temperatures that are concerning staff. Residents are also being monitored at night.
The risk of the effect of the heat is much greater with residents who are elderly, who have underlying health conditions. We are increasing the frequency of observations. We are obviously worried about the soaring temperatures at the night as well.
But not everyone, it seems, has been heeding the advice to take care in the soaring temperatures.
It's people who haven't been using sunblock or sun protection, and that we've seen a lot of burns. Some quite severe, particularly children, elderly people, dehydration.
And we're not out of the woods yet, as temperatures are expected to peak tomorrow afternoon.
Sejal Karia, News at 10, Cambridge.
Well, as those temperatures rise, so does the need for fresh adaptations to cope with the heat. Businesses, people and schools across the UK have responded to the country's first ever red warning. Closing early, staggering deliveries and generally trying to keep cool have been the order of the day. And as Sarah Corker reports, both young and old have been taking steps to stay safe.
He had 100 blooms.
Trying to keep cool at Parklands Primary in Leeds. Uniform rules have been relaxed and playing outside in the midday sun isn't allowed.
Last night I put a bottle of water inside the fridge and the bottle of water was right there.
How are you keeping cool?
By drinking loads of water.
Lessons are carrying on, but school was much quieter.
We've seen 160 out of 380 children not in school today.
And that's their parents' decision?
Yes, so we've been on the telephone checking, make sure everything's okay.
The head teacher is constantly monitoring classroom temperatures. The decision to stay open is under review.
Decisions whether to open or close have got to be taken on the ground level. They can't be taken from an office in London where one size doesn't fit all. Each school is different, so if a school leader says we've got to close, they're not doing it because they want an extra day off, they're doing it for the health, safety of all their pupils.
Small businesses are also changing how they operate.
I got up at 5 o'clock this morning just to try and get some cooking done in the cooler hours of the day.
This frozen food firm in Harrogate is staggering deliveries.
I have paused sending out orders via overnight courier because it's just too hot, and it's really important because it's for children that the food stays frozen, and it's just too risky, so I won't do that until the end of the week and into next week.
It's not just humans struggling with the heat. At this animal sanctuary in Bristol, pets were enjoying a paddle, and there was this serious message from vets too.
If you do see signs of them getting overheated, so excessive panting, drooling, lethargy, confusion, then take them somewhere cool, offer them water little and often.
Back in Yorkshire, hundreds of people descended on Ilkley's open-air swimming pool, a welcome relief from the scorching sun.
We've ordered 10 times the amount of water than we usually do. We've brought in multiple different first aiders, first aiding companies as well, external, not just ourselves as a council. We have at least 4 times the amount of staff than what we usually do.
We've done the same with Esme, what we would do, abroad, keep her covered up and keep a hat on and keep the fluids going.
Keeping cool because pregnancy's not going too good with the heat at the moment, so yeah, it's good to come out and have this area.
While some are clearly enjoying cooling off, these are conditions that Britain just isn't geared up to cope with, and it's set to get even hotter. Sarah Corker, News at 10 in Ilkley.
Well, this evening, police confirmed that another teenage boy is missing and believed to have drowned after getting into trouble in the Thames. He was 14 years old and disappeared in the water near Richmond in West London just before 5 this afternoon. His body has not been found, but police say they can only conclude that he has died. Well, as the plume of hot air nudges north, it now looks like Yorkshire could be in for some of the highest temperatures tomorrow, and there'll be more disruption on the railways as a result. Sangeeta, our North of England reporter, is in Leeds for us this evening. Sangeeta, if people there thought today was hot, well, things are set to get worse tomorrow.
Yeah, unfortunately so, and travel is going to be trickier tomorrow too because Network Rail has announced that it's going to suspend its East Coast Main Line services from about midday tomorrow till about 8 in the evening. The reason they say that is because of the impact the heat is having on the tracks. They're made of steel, and when they get too hot they expand, they can flex into a bit of an S shape, and that, in worst case scenarios, can lead to buckling. That's a scenario, of course, they're trying to avoid. Other operators are going one step further. LNER has said that it's going to suspend all of its services tomorrow, morning, noon and night. And one of the other concerns is the overhead wires. They can sag in the heat. They don't want to cause any damage to lines. That's one of the reasons why any services running tomorrow are probably going to be running at a reduced speed too. And there is real cause for concern because tomorrow the predictions are it's going to get hotter, with some of the highest temperatures expected to get to about 41 degrees here across Yorkshire and also in Lincolnshire. If that is the case, it will be hotter here than in London. It will be a record-breaking day and it will be very uncomfortable.
Indeed. Sangeeta in Leeds, thank you. Scientists believe today's record-breaking heat will occur more often and perhaps once every 3 years, unless or until greenhouse gas emissions are dramatically cut, all of which calls for a different way of living and working to adapt to climate change.
At this time of year, it would normally be a lot greener than this. It's golden, it's dry, and really the plant's just saying, I've had enough now, I'm giving up, I can't grow anymore.
On this farm in Lincolnshire, harvest time has come early.
This is unusual. Normally at this stage that will be very moisty and milky and you'll be able to squeeze that, whereas if you bite that it's hard.
This year, Andrew says his crops have only had half as much rain as last year's got. His sugar beet isn't growing as fast as it should, and he anticipates his yield will be down by 20%.
Normally you need 6 of these roots to make 1 bag of silver spoon sugar, but this sort of root you'd need 12 or 14 because of the size of them.
But this year isn't a one-off. It's part of an increasingly disturbing trend. Of the 10 hottest days on record in the UK, all but 1 have been since 1990. That year, 2 days in August brought extreme highs, but the other 7 were after the turn of the millennium, including in 2003, when temperatures in Faversham in Kent reached 38.5 degrees Celsius. That record was beaten when they reached 38.7 in Cambridge in 2019. But according to the architect of the 2015 Paris climate deal, none of this should come as a surprise.
We have been hearing from climate scientists for years that this is going to happen. And furthermore, we should be expecting even worse weather events. This is just a foretaste of what is coming at us.
Back in Lincolnshire, they are doing their best to prepare.
The job of these big blue pipes is to carry water from the north of the region, where there's a surplus, to the south, where there isn't enough. This is the biggest project of its kind in the UK, and in fact, when this network is finished, it'll be longer than the M6.
And experts say we should all be thinking of ways to adapt.
So adaptation is not optional. Adaptation is crucially important. We have to deal with climate change doing both. Mitigation, so stop burning fossil fuels, but also adaptation, adapt how we live, adapt how we design our cities.
Because scientists say what's happening to the crops on farms like this is not just a problem for farmers, but a warning to us all. Chloe Keedy, News at 10.
Well, to the south of the UK, today was the peak of the heatwave in other European countries. Ours, as we mentioned, is tomorrow. The French call today a heat apocalypse. Wildfires there are certainly causing catastrophic damage.
For a 7th blistering day, the fires in southwest France continue to rage, forcing the evacuation of thousands of people living and visiting this popular tourist region. And just when firefighters think they've got part of it under control, it flares up again. In all, 1,700 of them have been tackling 2 huge wildfires here. The skies above the Gironde becoming a combat zone as all day aeroplanes drop their payloads of water on burning forest. This afternoon, in the resort of La Teste de Bouc, police ordered the evacuation of another 8,000 people, queuing to leave as strong winds carried smoke towards their homes. Some forced to choose the most precious possessions to save before leaving in haste.
Are you worried? Are you frightened?
Oh, I'm sad. I'm really sad. It's never mind.
When I was leaving, I can hear explosion far from the south. I think it's camping that's are burning.
You got somewhere else to stay?
Yeah, we are cooking something.
It's not quite the holiday you imagined.
We have no choice, but it's too dangerous.
Above the town, the ominous sight and smell of thick black smoke from the burning forest fills the air. Firefighters now trusted with the homes of those who'd already left.
These firefighters are the last line of defence. They've spent much of the day getting hoses ready in case this fire should start moving this way towards these inhabited areas.
It's a nightmare being repeated in neighbouring countries. In Spain, huge areas of forest were incinerated in a matter of hours. The enemy not just the temperature but winds gusting up to 60 miles an hour. A firefighter and a shepherd who'd ignored an evacuation order lost their lives.
What's he doing?
The passengers on this train had a rather closer view of the fires than they might have liked, with flames on both sides of the tracks. A nervous moment as the driver stopped the train before safely resuming the journey after a few minutes. Tonight, in the Gironde, firefighters are being praised for their exceptional work, keeping the ferocious effects of climate change from people's very doorsteps.
Well, Ben is still in the Bordeaux region of France tonight. Ben, some incredible pictures there. How unusual are wildfires of this scale and intensity in that part of Europe?
Well, it's not unprecedented for there to be forest fires in this part of France. What is unprecedented is for a heat wave this intense to last this long, so early in the season and so widely across Europe. A senior French firefighter today said that there's no such thing as a fires season anymore. They need to be ready for them 12 months of the year, and a meteorologist described the temperatures in southwest France today as a heat apocalypse. Indeed, provisional readings taken just a few miles from here put the high today at 42.6 Celsius. That's a new French record. Now, the temperatures are expected to drop tomorrow, quite significantly actually, down to the high 20s, but the wind is still expected to be strong, and that will continue to make life difficult for the firefighters here. 600 of them remain on duty tonight, tackling the fire a short distance from here. The local government here says that the fire is still gaining ground, so the danger hasn't passed, and with the ground so dry across Europe, the prospect of more deadly fires will continue throughout this summer.
All right, Ben, thank you. And things are hotting up in the contest to be the next Prime Minister. The former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, is now just 5 votes away from reaching the all-important final 2. Penny Mordaunt is still second, but going backwards. Tom Tugendhat is out, so that could leave Liz Truss and Kemi Badenoch competing to stand against Mr Sunak. Well, the man who one of the final 4 will replace couldn't make this morning's heatwave meeting. Boris Johnson had another high-flying engagement.
In they came again, and
Tom Tugendhat is eliminated from the election.
Then there were 4. Rishi Sunak leading the pack with 14 more MPs, taking his total to 115. Penny Mordaunt slipping back by 1 to 82 in second place. And then a battle on the right of the party between Liz Truss, who only went up 7 to 71, and Kemi Badenoch, who went up 9 to 58. Tom Tugendhat eliminated with the support of 31 MPs. Do you think Kemi Badenoch should step out of this race now to unite the right?
Well, I would certainly like her to step out, because I think that she could join forces, as Suella has done, with Liz, and then make a formidable team. She's done very well, but it is time now, I think, for us all to get behind Liz and make sure she goes into the final round.
What do you say to that?
Absolutely no chance. Kemi's in it to win it. They said she wouldn't get the 20 names for the nominations. They said she'd be out in the first, she'd be out in the second round. She's gone beyond expectations every single time.
And so comes the horse trading. On a night in Parliament where MPs are already haggling over numbers, particularly the votes of the 31 MPs who backed Tom Tugendhat and who will be up for grabs tomorrow.
We will travel as a pack with him. We are incredibly strong and loyal team surrounding him, and we will look forward to seeing, as we discuss together, where the right place to go is.
All the momentum was with Penny Mordaunt last week. Today she slipped back by 1 vote. What's gone wrong?
Well, after 3 days of the most extraordinary and vicious personal attack in the Conservative media, to be honest, I think it's a triumph that she's in second place.
The viciousness has not just been aimed at Penny Mordaunt, with several blue-on-blue attacks in last night's ITV debate, including this on the economy.
This something-for-nothing economics isn't conservative, it's socialism.
Under your plans, we are predicted to have a recession.
The intensity of the attacks led to an outpouring on MP WhatsApp groups. One message leaked to ITV News said, "The division, smears and personal attacks this weekend have been disgraceful. Nothing will kill our party more than blue on blue. It's shameful," added another. "I can't believe this is happening." But as Boris Johnson laid down a vote of confidence in his own government earlier, he talked up Tory unity.
After 3 dynamic and exhilarating years in the cockpit, we will find a new leader and we will coalesce in loyalty around him or her. And the vast twin Rolls-Royce engines of our Tory message, our Conservative values and beliefs will roar on.
He was talking about a real cockpit as the Prime Minister channelled his inner Tom Cruise in a Typhoon fighter jet. D-Mob happy perhaps as he prepares to say goodbye to his time in charge. Anushka Astana, News at 10.
And in the last few moments, government has won that confidence vote that Anushka mentioned. Well, Robert is here to make sense of all of that. Where did today's ballot results leave the Tory leadership race then?
So it's perfectly clear that Rishi Sunak is now going to be in the final two, that runoff over the summer where members choose who our next Prime Minister is. But it is all to play for in terms of second place. Penny Mordaunt, who's been in second place for some time now, is still in second place, but she went backwards a tiny bit. The biggest gain was from Kemi Badenoch, who was almost nobody had heard of before this competition, middle-ranking minister. And Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, made slightly less progress than she would have wanted. Now, my initial analysis was that this meant that Penny Mordaunt probably now wouldn't face Sunak in the runoff because she's lost momentum. But I've just heard that possibly half of Tom Tugendhat's supporters, he was the chap who got knocked out tonight, that's about 15 or 16, are likely to go to Penny Mordaunt tomorrow, which would then lift her much nearer that crucial 120 threshold, with only a small number, perhaps 3 or 4, going each to Badenoch and Truss, which would mean that tomorrow Kemi Badenoch will be left out, if my information is correct. Okay. And therefore the big contest tomorrow will be between Truss and Mordaunt for second place.
All right, Robert, we shall find out tomorrow if your predictions are correct. Thank you. To the potential dangers of brain damage from heading in football could be eliminated altogether for under-12s in England. At the moment, the guidance is that they should not practice heading in training. Now, the Football Association will bring in a ban in certain competitions on a trial basis with a view to make it permanent in 2 seasons' time. Now, anyone seeking a bit of shade in some of Kent's ancient woodland might think they'd succumb to heat stroke after all when a small group of bison appeared through the trees today. In fact, one of the reasons bison has been reintroduced is for their role in tackling climate change. They can manage the habitat in a natural and organic way by grazing and felling trees, creating space for other wildlife.
Early this morning in the Kent countryside, something not witnessed here for thousands of years. Led by the matriarch, 3 wild bison take their first steps into a woodland near Canterbury. And after taking a few moments to get their bearings, they start to get to work, doing just what they've been brought here to do.
It's been brilliant. They've come out, and this is exactly what we hoped. When we opened the slides up, they just looked out there and thought, my goodness, there's food everywhere. And that's what they did. They headed straight to the smaller trees, started browsing on those, which is, of course, what they do. They open up. You get a stable herd of bison, you get a stable forest and a stable environment. They start opening up areas.
The European bison, which can weigh up to a tonne, have been introduced by Kent Wildlife Trust and the Wildwood Trust to manage more than 1,000 acres of enclosed woodland. It's hoped they'll slowly kill off the plantation of Corsican pines, making way for native species to spring up in their place.
They just create this mosaic of landscape, and they fertilise the land. They disperse seeds. They have these huge dust baths as well. They'll lay down, create these big clouds of dust, which again opens up the ground, creates a habitat for invertebrates, for lizards, reptiles, and of course bird life will really thrive on that as well.
And after similar successful reintroduction programmes in Europe, it's hoped these ecosystem engineers will help to slow down climate change and restore the British countryside. Martha Fairley, News at 10, Kent.
And that is all for tonight. Thank you very much for being with us. The national weather forecast is on the way, and you'll find more tips about how to get to sleep during the heat on our website. So good night from all of us. Sleep well if you can.